Hello from Portland. This is a response to a video by Chris, which was a response to a video by Stacie, who was reading from the Soul Pancake book with the question, does sex affect your soul? And Chris first raises the question of what we mean by the word soul, and I don't want to get too bogged down in the terminology. Soul is not an exclusively religious term. People use it in both religious and secular contexts to mean your will, your personality, your inner self, your heart. If I had to give my own definition, I would say your soul is the part of you that chooses. And I think that part of you that makes choices is affected every time you're connected to another human being. And from that starting point, obviously, I think sex affects your soul. Sex is a very powerful human connection. It's not necessarily the most powerful, but it is a very strong and often very troubling kind of intimacy between people. And I think your sexual relationships do have a lot to do with the kind of person that you become. And this brings me to something I've been actually wanting to talk about in a video for a while, which is that I think our discussions of sort of the ethics and morality of sex are very wrongly focused. Because, as I've talked before, there's different moral foundations from which people approach moral questions. And a lot of discussion of sex comes through a lens of purity and what kinds of sexual acts are okay and what kinds are immoral and who should you be allowed to have sex with and how many sexual partners should you have over the course of your life. All these questions about sort of the mechanics or the logistics are, to me, kind of beside the point. What matters much, much more is how you treat other people. How do you treat the people with whom you have sex or with whom you're trying to have sex, the people you're dating or the people you're flirting with? This is an area where I think we tend to overcomplicate the ethical questions because with very few exceptions, most of how you should treat people with whom you have sex is how you should treat other people in general, with respect, with kindness, with empathy. And if you are someone who approaches sex in a selfish way or with some kind of contempt for your partner, that's really going to do some harm to your soul. By contrast, if you approach sex as you should approach everything, as an opportunity to form a positive connection with someone else, to treat them lovingly, to treat them respectfully, and to do something that's mutually pleasurable and fun and rewarding, then it can have a hugely positive effect. And I'm a huge fan of Dan Savage. I've talked about his books before. And in fact, his day job basically is writing an advice column about sex. One of the things that always strikes me about Dan Savage's advice is that he's obviously not a traditionalist when it comes to sex, but he is very, very harsh, and I think rightfully so, on people who break promises, people who treat other people poorly, people who are disrespectful or unkind or selfish with their sexual partners. And that's something whenever my son asks about sex, and I try to be fairly direct with him about sex. He's 9, so he doesn't get too deep into the specifics of it, but he wants to know about it. He's curious about it. And I always try to answer his questions in ways he'll understand, but also in ways that lay a foundation of how I think he should approach sex and how he should approach relationships with other people. And that all these things he's learned about being kind and being generous and being respectful don't just disappear when he's confronted with sexual situations. All of those values, all of those ways of treating people are vital in any kind of sexual relationship. As with most things, I think it all comes back to human connection. In finding a way to connect with other people in a way that's intimate and deep and meaningful and powerful and fun. So yes, I think sex really does affect your soul. I think how you approach sex shapes a lot of your personality and values and can do so in a really positive way if you approach it in a positive way. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.